Monotype.
Welcome to Creative Characters from Monotype, the show where we meet the people working at the intersection of type and everyday life. I'm your host, Carl, and I'm here today with my co-host, Cadley. What's up, Cadley?
Hi, Carl.
So today we are sharing an older episode, but it's one of my favorites and one of our audience's favorites as well. It's a conversation I had a couple years back with the one and only Aaron Draplin.
Buckle up, children of the electronic landscape.
Aaron is behind Draplin Design Company, based out of Portland, Oregon, and he's what I would consider somewhat of a celebrity in the design world. We've definitely both been following him for quite a long time. Carl, how would you describe Aaron?
Thick lines. I think that's his term. He likes thick lines, big, bold, iconic works, simple but deceptively so, colorful, loves orange, loves bright colors, and definitely rooted in a kind of post-mid-century American design aesthetic. He draws a lot from sort of Midwestern agribusiness and blue-collar business logo design and sort of mushes it all together into something that feels familiar but also uniquely Draplin. That was good. He should hire me to write some copy for him.
Seriously. Aaron was at the top of our list of dream guests for the podcast for a while. So when we realized we were set up next to him at Adobe Max, we decided to walk over kind of awkwardly and shoot our shot. It was day one of Adobe Max, and it was in the morning before the show floor opened. So Carl and I basically snuck over to his very brightly colored, like Technicolor booth, just covered in merch that he's designed. So trucker hats, beanies, posters. Selfishly, we wanted to kind of shop before everyone else could get in. But then secondly, we wanted to introduce ourselves and, as fans, which many people do and stand in line to do all day. So I was a little intimidated, but as soon as we met, all the anxiety melted away. He's super friendly, boisterous, will just make you laugh.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind is disarming. He's very accessible and extremely human. And when you're at Adobe Max, you look around and we're there, and Meta is next to us, and Microsoft, and all these other big companies, and then right in the middle of it is this loud guy from Michigan, dressed in bright colors and big bushy beard, and hugging people and taking selfies and shouting and hooting and hollering, and I can see why he had a line around the corner of people waiting to meet him for the entire conference. And he stood there and he hugged and took pictures with every single one of them. And it was just the most mind-blowing thing to observe.
He is a bit of a party.
Over the years, Aaron has designed for everyone from the Obama administration to snowboard brands, you name it. Lately, it seems like he's been doing a lot of work for musicians that he happens to love. He recently did the album packaging for a Chris Stapleton record and churned out a t-shirt for one of my favorite bands, Dinosaur Jr., that features a drooling bulldog on a skateboard. I bought it, of course. As indicated in this interview, he's sort of steering his time and efforts towards projects befitting a man trying to slow down and enjoy life a bit more.
Aaron is a very humble person. Even in this episode, you won't hear him list out this amazing list of clients or brands that he's worked with. And something that I really appreciated a few years ago at Adobe Max during his keynote, he spent the last few minutes sharing up-and-coming designers and illustrators and, shared their work and ways to follow them and even hire them. And I thought that was just a really nice way to use his platform.
Believe it or not, Adobe Max 2025 is just around the corner, coming up late in October. And so as we were getting ready to do another live episode on the ground, we thought, what better way to turn the calendar than to revisit this conversation with Aaron, who is an Adobe Max mainstay. He jokes that one of these days they'll stop inviting him, but I don't think that will happen anytime soon. So we look forward to seeing him and all of you there, and hope you enjoy this conversation with Aaron Draplin. Aaron Draplin, Welcome to the podcast factory. We're going to make some content together today.
Buckle up, children of the electronic landscape, because now is the time that we worm into your ears and change your life. To all the beautiful people that were helping us with the tech, please make me sound smart and articulate and trend-setting and exciting. Please do that. Put the filter on. And thanks for having me. All right, let's do it.
It's so nice to have you. Thank you for making the time for us.
Yeah. Here we are. I'm in my 49th year. I saw you just 4 months ago at the zenith of the year. You guys were across the street from us at Adobe Max. And you guys had a long line. I had a long line. People were in there doing their personality kind of a thing.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of research into how type actually affects people's sort of like emotional responses to design. It's funny though you mentioned, because that's kind of where I wanted to start today, was going back to Adobe Max, because I've had a question I've wanted to ask you ever since that event.
Sure.
But I feel like we should set the scene first for anyone who's not been there, because Adobe Max is wild. And like you said, we were right across from each other. Your booth was across the street, so to speak, from ours. And so we kind of got to know each other a little bit over the course of the event. And I have kind of like a front row seat to the Draplin experience.
Yeah.
So where we were was in the sponsored room, which is like a giant airplane hangar, right? And it reeks of fresh carpet and all kinds of activity. And 11 o'clock in the morning on the first day, they open the doors and people come flooding in. And I think from that moment, pretty much until they closed the doors on Thursday, you had a line of people at your booth that had to be 30, 40, 50 people long.
Yeah.
And, I kind of spent the whole time kind of like observing. And I swear, you stood at the end of that line on a duct tape X and you took
That's right. Yeah.
pictures with every single person. It must have been 3,000-4,000 people.
That was my 10th running of the Adobe Max. That means it's been 10 little kind of custom talks each year. It's who, what, when, where, why, your latest bunch of stuff. I've gotten into the weeds with like, these are the mistakes I've made and here's what I tried to learn from. And you're basically, how do you show your latest bunch of work? So that's where it all starts with, is I get to go and share that with this community. First of all, as a big Adobe Illustrator fan and user of Photoshop, of course, and these tools, it's this great privilege to be anywhere near that stuff, because 1 year before the 10 years, I wasn't going to those things. They cost money. A lot of the people that you meet there, they are sent there by companies and internal sorts of things. And then you meet one kid out of the 20 or 30 that paid for his ticket, and he's there to see all the stuff and learn a bunch of stuff. And I really focus it on that stuff. So, about 10 years ago, when I did that first one, I gave a facilities guy a $50 or $100 bill or something and just said, hey, can you get me a table? And he just kind of looked around and he said, hey, you didn't get this from me, And he brought the table out and I set my little shit up, my merch, and a couple kids caught on and they were like, you're selling stuff? I said, yeah. And I had a line within about a couple minutes, because here's the deal. I went to festivals as a kid and, nothing sucks more than I just heard this person talk and they're hidden in some backstage. I understand they're rock and rollers, they're whatever, but I'm a camper. I want to go out there and mingle, talk to people and meet people and share those sort of like, where are you from? What are you doing? Because I was so excited just to be there.
Yeah.
And of course, make a good stiff profit on some merch too, right? Because that has been part of my story, right? Well, I got in a little bit of hot water because, an army of people come running up to me with clipboards saying, what are you doing? Who are you? What is it? I said, well, I just got done speaking. I'm in the romper room, in between scrapbooking and, whatever the next one was after me, and whatever, like I was at the lowest level of this bullshit. Fine. And it was a blast. So, okay, it just starts this weird chapter of like, every year it's gotten crazier and crazier. Obviously with the pandemic, we took a couple of years off. I was still involved. I did it virtual here from the shop, and there was a film crew here. I felt overly privileged to even be involved once yet again for what? Number 8 and number 9. Okay. So what it comes down to is like 4 years ago, we'll call it number 7. We had the same booth, the same size, the same setup, the same 30, 40, 50 people the entire time. Now, at least that time, I brought my brother-in-law down. Lee was there with me, my girlfriend. So the three of us are able to kind of like tag team this thing. And you're kind of kissing babies and shaking hands and signing books and signing posters and just being a person they can come and talk to. every now and again, people would go through that line, they wouldn't buy a thing, and they just wanted to say, I really agree with the way you do what you do. And there's been even a couple that said, I'm not down with what you do, but I just like your energy. I mean, which is like, what do you say when you're standing in front of somebody? So to be open to that, as surreal as that is, it's been this improbable thing. And I'm always waiting for it to go away, because I did not plan that into my life.
You sort of took the question right out of my mouth, because I remember standing there and watching this for days, just parade of people and the selfies and the hugs and the thumbs up and the faces, and you keep your energy so high in that setting. And I wonder, like, do you ever step back and think to yourself, like, this is freaking crazy? Like,
the entire time. I mean, Lee and I have little signals of like, Aaron, this kid's tearing up. Watch it. And I know how to handle that. I know it sounds a little megalomania-ish, but I'm one of those kids. I'm one of those, and I'm still one of those. If I'm in an airport and I see a rock and roller I'm pretty good at going up to them and not scaring them, or whatever. But I know how to chill a kid out who is ramped up and amped up. They've been reading my stuff for years. They grew up seeing the videos. They grew up with the book. They spent the last 6 or 7 years of their life seeing my name out there floating around. And here's their chance to talk to me. But I just, some people are just like, just get the selfie and we're out of here. We're on to the next booth. We got to go wait in line over a monotype. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Lee always likes to say, the moment you step back out into like where you park or something, Aaron, you're just some guy fighting with a parking attendant about how much parking costs. Like whatever this is on the inside of here, this isn't necessarily real life, but it is real for those 3 days.
I was thinking back to Max, sort of preparing for this episode. And then I was having a conversation with my son recently. He's 11. He's big into baseball. And he's had an opportunity to like meet some players and like knock knuckles with some guys and had really positive experiences. And then he comes away just like, yeah, I want to be that guy. And I said to him in this conversation, I was like, yeah, they say, never meet your idols, but sometimes you do and it's worth it. And he was like, I don't understand what that means, Dad. What are you saying to me? But I thought of you because I was like, whether you acknowledge it or not, or want to, maybe this makes you uncomfortable, but I do feel like you kind of have that status for a lot of designers and a lot of young designers. And do you ever feel kind of an obligation to give these people that come to meet you like a certain experience, or are you just being yourself in the moment?
Well, with that interest in your mess, you got to be careful you don't write a check you can't cash. And this is some squirmy stuff to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. You got to be careful, because you can change someone's trajectory with the 3 sentences that you share. So I'm really careful when people come up to me and say things like, I'm having a hard go, and become like a therapist or something, and it's like, okay, take a deep breath, have a good time here, go rip around and drink and fight and steal and whatever you guys are doing for 2.5 days here, have a great time. But when you get home, don't forget this, coming out of that pandemic and whatever, people are hurting. People are vulnerable. I don't have the answers to some of those scarier things. Like, how do I charge for my work? I mean, people will just walk right up to me and ask me that. And it's like, I'm not that. I'll just liken it to the way that I work. And that is as real, as authentic, and let's just say pragmatic and healthy as possible. I am not going to sell them some motivational bullshit that others are selling people. It freaks me out. I just hope that when they met me, I was a nice person. I was authentic to, myself and to that experience. And I'm not selling them something that's going to be a Band-Aid right now. So, okay, just case in point, like we go do these workshops. Let's get weird for a day, right? Now, in that time, I am pretty careful with trying to solve someone's whatever they're going through, right? What I can offer are tactile tips, tricks, techniques, tales, and threats, whatever you want to call it. Like I have all these little jokes and stuff, but it really is. It's tips, tricks, and techniques to make you better an illustrator that day. And there's a PDF to back it up. So it's not in one ear and out the next ear. It feels good. It's, whatever, you're pumping them up. No. When they go back to work on Monday morning, they have stuff to use to try in a new way of what? Tuning up a logo, right? So I am crazy careful about that stuff, because with the privilege of having someone standing in front of you, you also have their ear and you can move a needle on someone. And I often wonder what's the most responsible way to do that. So you're not ever hurting someone ever.
Yeah.
Or the buzz wears off a day later and they're like, how do I use that in my life? And I know how to quickly get to these things where I say, why are you here? And what do you like to do? All right. And what do you do for a living? Well, let's not worry about that. You have to have one foot in the 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it, the 10 to 6. And what happens after 6 o'clock? That's what we're here to talk about, because I liberated myself from that 10 to 6 by working late on my own stuff. And in some respects, showed enough of it and a good spirit, then people started to call me and say, well, would you apply that to our brand or band or restaurant or whatever? When I tell that story, I am super careful.
Yeah.
But I don't think it comes off as that, because you've seen I'm a big gorilla and all this kind of stuff, and hopefully it comes off as fun and lighthearted. But that is, I know it sounds a little like, oh yeah, right, Draplin, but
Well, I feel like it's tough, someone in a position like yours, like you've had a successful career, you've kind of done it your own way. So people look at you and they be like, that guy figured it out, so I'll just do what he did. Or he must have the secret. He must be some kind of oracle or whatever. But I mean, the reality is everyone's an individual. So no two paths are going to look the same. You can give someone some pointers along the way that they can incorporate into their work. But I think, if you kind of like dig into your story or read your book or whatever, what comes out of it is kind of figuring out who you are as a designer. Like, what's your point of view? What do you want to do with this skill or this craft that you have? And that's something that nobody has the answers to that. You don't have the answers for everyone who asks you. That comes from the person, right?
Yeah. Some of my favorite exchanges I have on these DMs and stuff, I have a funny little anecdote about social media and just the power of it. About 5 years ago now, in my Instagram, a friend who I was working for, or maybe it was a client I was working for, was like, you didn't see my DM? And I didn't really even know what a direct message was. And they were like, no, you touched the little, what is it, like a little paper airplane or something in the corner. Now, what's interesting is I had been using Instagram up to that point for, 8 or 9 years. And I had never clicked on the damn whatever that, and just this little bratwurst finger touching in the corner. I had never touched that little airplane. So I touched it one day after this guy was like trying to get a hold of me on there, and I see 4,000 messages or something.
Oh, jeez.
Now, I of course, like, I'm scrolling through trying to find this guy's from a couple days before, and it was this weird moment of like, oh my God, this is all changing. They're not just going to my email. They're coming to find me on these platforms that I don't even know how to take completely seriously, and I need to do that now. So what that meant was it was another hill to climb every day to make sure that I am a good citizen inside of there. And some of my favorite exchanges are middle-aged people who are a little stuck, and they're not asking for, how do I get a job? How do I do this? They're not asking that. They're saying, hey, we're aging with you. What are you doing differently these days? Because I have the job. Yes, you do. Good. Keep that. Yeah, it's just a weird thing. You got to be careful with it. I don't want to ever hurt anyone, and I don't ever want to like mislead someone. Do I have all the answers? No, but I'm fairly transparent to talk about kind of how I was able to cobble together whatever couple things it was for me. And unfortunately, a lot of that is just regular old tenacity. It's not cutting things off at the knees halfway through and saying, I can't do this. The word grind freaks me out because of all the graphics, rise and grind and all this kind of shit. But no, I kind of have to blast through it, or whatever you want to call it, and keep my eye on the prize, which is like, here's the focus. Here is what I have to deliver. I mean, I have a thing of sketches here that I'm working on an icon for someone, and those first sketches are due, right? And it's like, I break it off at a bite-sized little piece, and I know what I have to do, but here's the deal. I won't leave this cockpit until that thing is sent, right? Because then I can go and do the rest of my day. That takes commitment. That takes some planning. And it took elbow grease this weekend when people were, I don't know what they were doing over the weekend. I came in here when there was no, Carl Unger's bugging me to be on their podcast. There's none of that. It was just me, and I got to like listen to a couple records and focus and do it. And that's sometimes what I try to say is like, if you're having a hard go, remember what made this fun in the first place and get there. For instance, Lee and I will go out to eat. as things ease up, these last couple of years, and I'll sit and draw her while we're sitting there, and I'll sit and sketch, and that just loosens me up, because I'm not thinking about it. I've done this all the way since I was 5 years old, right? Like, as soon as we would sit down as a family, my mom would turn the placemat over, and I'd be off to the races waiting for, the food to show up. And at 49 years old, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
But there is something to just getting back to what you love to do, which is sketch or draw or make. And then when you see something that you dig, pulling that thing aside, and that's where the workshop will come into play, because I can show them how to bring that thing to life, and it's just tactile information. Here's how you do this. Here's how you can build any logo with the simplest of shapes. Shit like this, right? Like, that's real. That's not just me saying, here's how you get out of that kind of poopy space, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but there's a flicker to this stuff, and when it's burning bright, there's a lot of energy. When it slows down, how do I be a good citizen in both of those moments? As I ramp down, because I know we were talking ahead of time about like, how long does this stuff even go? Because I need to be gracious about when it does slow down, because I'm excited for that chapter. We just went to Palm Springs, and my buddy there has a beautiful property that he bought and refurbished. And when I go there, I really study. Here's a guy that's shifted gears, and now he is like a home builder and a refurb kind of guy, or whatever you want to call it, or maybe even a contractor, but he's just learning. And then you see the inspiration that he's gathering, and it's like, ooh, he went and reinvented himself, right? That's really, really interesting to me, because at what point, do I kind of like say, oh, maybe I'm not best candidate to be go talking to Adobe Max. But, here's the thing. That'll be in October. I'm going to be talking to them about what it's like to liquidate my mom and dad's home. How does what graphic design taught me apply to something scary like that? What will I learn from that? What could I apply from a lifetime in graphic design to that stuff? You know what I'll apply? Kick-ass signage. Nice little price tags. Because job number one is to milk as much cash out of that from my mom, to set her up for her, the last 100 years of her life. So I'm going to use graphic design and my skill set just to get her the fairest price as we liquidate all that stuff, right? And then that's something that I can go talk about, because that is exactly what's going on in my life. How do I use design to solve the things around me? Well, I mean, there's some weird shit. Like, I went to a dermatologist, and it was my first time going in and like just ready for inspection. Every fold, flap, crevice, cornice, mountain peak, whatever you guys want to get into. But what I did was I made this little printout and was like, the red is the stuff I'm concerned about. The blue, I don't know what the hell to do about. And the green, like, what does that mean? I used design and what I know how to do to communicate in that moment, because I was terrified.
People get into design or writing or whatever because they love it. And so it's a way of translating that passion or that fun into a living wage, right? The flip side, though, is that any kind of adult job can be a grind, or it can just get old, and you can lose your sense of inspiration and motivation. And one of the challenges is, if you're 32, 35 years old and you're like, I'm starting to get a little tired of this, you're staring down 20 more years. And so I think it's a challenge of how do you constantly reinvent and reinvigorate yourself over time so that you don't lose your love for the work.
Well, that's a really romantic thing too, because, you use the word love where you say like, man, there are days where this is a job like anything. I'm at some weird little spot here where it's like, wait, I'm coming up on 50 years old. Do I have 10 more years, 5 more years? And beyond that, what does it look like? So we have been wrestling with how to creatively downshift and to anticipate when that change comes and to be set up for that, So, I mean, financially, I saved everything. The squirreling away that I saw as a kid in the Midwest, that's all I know. So I saved it all because I was always afraid that this little wave I've been riding that's been getting bigger and bigger each year, it's going to crash, right? And when it crashes, do I have my little budget intact? I'm proud to report, of course I do. Because when I started to get ahead, I saw where that was going, and then I started to get ahead for the next year and the year after that. And now when I talk with my accountant, we aren't talking about, what's going to happen in the next 6 months. It's these kind of weird, abstract things where it's like, hey, 5 years from now, you're going to be 54 and a half years old. What do you want to be doing? it's a really fun conversation because it's going to be all about slowing down, whatever that means. And whatever my favorite thing I can do is, and that's probably make a logo or make a piece of merch. And then am I still relevant to some kid who's buying that thing? Well, one of the things at the merch table, and you saw the shit spilled out, we get a lot of people who aren't buying necessarily just for them. They're saying things to me like, my kid is going to love this. And we're getting ready to have a baby. And we bought 3 of your posters. We're going to put them in this kid's nursery. Like that brings me to the edge of tears because it's always like, in a nursery, It's not about cool, hip, weird, ironic. It's just about nice color. And then if they want me to sign them, I'm signing them to like, baby so-and-so. Like the kid hasn't even been born,
Future baby.
As we slow things down, what's that going to look like? Well, other designers are going to be, downshifting too. So I was kicking the tires on I turned 50 in October. What if I took that year off?
Mm-hmm.
I've built a mechanism around me where I can't stop today. I just can't stop. We've got Skillshare videos. There's field notes always pumping in and around. There's a series of talks coming up. There's merch that has to be shipped. The mechanism, the snowball is still rolling around, right? But how I've been slowing that down actively is I've been taking less and less client work until Chris Stapleton calls 3 weeks ago and I'm right back in it, because I get to work for Chris Stapleton. He's a big country star. I don't even know the details of all that. It's just one big record scratch. And I am right back in that focus and ability to say, okay, here's what we're going to do for this project, right? It does not take much. Here I am trying to mitigate what this is going to look like in my life. And then they dangle and I am right back in it, So, it's, it's like you think of a fish and some shit on a lure, it's flashy, I am that guy, that can just quickly get right back into the mode.
I have to be honest, and this is not like a quid pro quo situation, but I did buy the pizza slice poster for my son.
Thank you. Right now. Thank you so much, Carl. I knew that's what put us over the edge and made it so we were gonna make rent.
Fully honest, I bought it after you said yes, you do the podcast. So it was I didn't show up with an arm full of merch and be like, you want to come on our podcast?
Well, tell me this much. Tell me this much.
How much did you spend?
Oh shit! Did the kid like it?
Oh, he loves it. Yeah,
oh, great.
Yeah, he loved it. And you know what? It's funny. We were snowboarding last weekend, and we saw, I think, your arbor board in the wild. It's really nice.
That is something that it's going to sound a little weird, but I was a little uncomfortable with. Because when you're a 22-year-old kid saving for your snowboard, and if you found out a 48-year-old was making it for you, I'll just put it this way. When I was 22, that would have freaked me out a little bit, right? Because when I was 22, it might have been a kid who was 24 making it or 25 making it or some person, she was just 4 years older than us and she had all the knowledge and vision to make some funny snowboarding jacket or something. I really held that close to me because it was kind of by us, for us, this kind of cool thing. And all these years later, I don't really seek a lot of that action sports stuff. I had a hell of a run back in the early, 2010s, 11, 12s, 13s, 8s, 7s, whatever. I had a great run in all that world. Got to start some companies with friends, walk it all the way through Union Bindings, Cole Headwear, Snowboard Magazine. Oh, I got to work for all the brands. But it just got to the point where I'm not even going outside anymore. I don't go up to the hill anymore. I that's just not my jam. It was a long time ago. And I started to feel a little disingenuous, So when Arbor came along a couple of years ago, I gave him the whole rattle and the kid was just kind of like, I don't care about any of that. I know you can come up with something cool, put it on the board, all right. And it was just I was right back in it. But I will say what people don't often hear is when I'm kind of saying, I know I could do something, but here's a couple names of a couple youngsters that you should go after. They're in it. They're up at the hill. They're doing the stuff. They've asked me how I get a job in this stuff. Maybe go talk to them. They're hungry. And it's always a little bit of a want to some, kid who's writing to meet me. But I would rather say that and just opt out. And so check it out. Have them do the 92.9% of it, and I'll come in for the last 3 or 4% just to make sure it's cool, whatever, things line up and stuff. When I go to see things at a snowboard shop, I'm just very removed from that world. There's work to be had, but I don't know if that's my best foot forward. I already did that a lot of years ago. But it warms my heart to hear that you guys saw that, recognized it, and it was out there ripping around. And I hope it was on someone who was my age. You know what I mean?
It was on I would say an over 30.
Cool. We went 10 years ago. After a lifetime of doing this stuff here in Portland, and we went up to Mount Hood Meadows. We had tickets given to us because I did a job or something, so we had tickets ready to go from a buddy who worked up there. We drove up. It was a beautiful day. It was a bluebird day, and we got up there, and you have the boots and the gear and the jackets and the shit and the stuff. And we took one run, and we just looked at each other, me and my buddy, and we were like, let's go home. It just isn't for us anymore. You know, it was beautiful. It was cool, but it was just this sort of thing where it was like, I made peace with the fact that I had done it as intense as I had, and I had moved on from that. And really that was in 1998 when I went back to school in Minneapolis and kind of threw it all away. You know, I had saw where it was going. It was kind of this Peter Pan existence where we're just chasing these winters and you're working all summer to pay for a more and more and more expensive pass. Nothing wrong with any of that. But I wanted to kind of like stop the bleeding. I did it for 5 winters. You know, I mean, where was it going? Seeing the writing on the wall that I wasn't going to be able to make any kind of a living there, right? And definitely not in graphic design. Maybe there was a couple little inklings that there was something was going to happen, but no, I was going to go for a surer bet, which was get out of this, go back to school, and see where that takes me.
Yeah.
So, going back to this idea of like kids coming in, I get a lot of kids asking me about school, and I'm pretty proud of the answers that I have. Like, they're very pragmatic. Stop, take a breath, think this through, go make a little checklist of like pros and cons. If you jump out, it's going to be harder to get back in. Are your parents paying for you to go? Shut your mouth and go figure that shit out. You know what I mean? Like, pretty kind of harsh. Like, do not throw this out because you're having a bad semester. Take a semester off. Because for me to go back, it was such a privilege to just dive back into it. I had already had 5 winters off in between. I went 17 and 19. I got out of high school at 17. I went 17 and 19. I did an associate's degree. I took 5 years off to go be an animal in the West. 4 of those summers, I worked up in Alaska. So how did I get my first computer? That's how I did it. Those summers would pay off the previous winter where things got away from me on a credit card or whatever it was. So I would pay off all my creditors, when I got back, and then I would be back to kind of halfway, I could at least buy a pass. But I started to see that cycle. It started to freak me out. And it was like, no. There's something else coming to roost here. My parents are going to need help. And this isn't going to cut it. Me squirreling by on basically nothing in a small mountain town, it wasn't going to cut it. So I had to make changes. And all I'm saying is that was really exciting, Yeah. But I do miss that culture. One of the hard things, without sounding like too much of a, cynical person or maybe someone with a bit of a grudge, was realizing that you're not a rich kid. It was really hard for me to kind of realize that. And that was a liberating thing to get away from that and be like, okay, It's not real life. It's just not real life. And here I am in and around it. When I pulled myself one step back from that, I saw like, oh, that's what that looks like. And here's what it looks like having to go out and get a job and make a living. I remember when I got out of school, big art school in Minneapolis, College of Art and Design. One of my professors was, okay, we're doing a bit of a review on you. You have some talent. What are you going to go do with this? And I remember my answer as clear as day. I said, I'm going to go make a living. That was pragmatic and it was fun. It sounded great to me. First of all, I was broke, but that wasn't enough for this professional teacher type. It wasn't enough. I needed to say I was going to go and save the world with, typeface selections and colors and logos and shit. I wasn't. I was going to go, work for something. Like I remember, I was in the Midwest, I was in Minneapolis, and I remember looking in the details of Cabela's, and it was like, oh, Omaha. Oh, I've been through Omaha a number of times. Maybe I can move to Omaha and work for the Cabela's catalog. And I was talking about that in this review, and it just was like, Like, why would you want to go do a pedestrian job like that? You're going to be able to go do this. And I just, to this day, it's still disgusting to me to think that way and to have heard that and was like, hey, asshole, 1 out of 1,000 gets to work at the Walker Art Center, which was this cultural, elite, awesome place in Minneapolis. I love it, blah, blah, blah. 1 or 2 out of 1,000. 998 of us are going to go make catalogs for something, right?
Yep.
That was a sure bet to me. It was just as romantic. It was scary to me to think that I was going to get to some pinnacle and suddenly be around a bunch of fidgets that wanted nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah.
I saw that. I smelled that. So it's too nuts and bolts to say I'm just interested in making a living because I need to pay back a school loan.
It's interesting talking about this because, I mean, you graduated college what year? What did you finish art school?
It would have been 2000.
Okay. So you were sort of coming out of art school at what we might call like the dawn of the Adobe era, right? So like early days of Photoshop and whatnot. Yeah. Because one of the speakers at Max, this guy Kadir Nelson, he's a painter, and he was telling a story about being in college in 1998, I think. And he said in a graphic design class, a student shared some work, and the teacher asked him how he did it, and he said Photoshop. And Kadir Nelson goes like, "Was that like in the student union building? Like, where's the Photoshop?" You know, quite a bit different now. You know, student designers, young designers have so many tools at their disposal and so many ways they can learn the craft. I guess, does art school still make sense? Like if you were 22, 20 years old and thinking, yeah, graphic design, I want to do something like that. Like what would you even do? And let's not forget, college is expensive.
Yeah.
What is a young, aspiring graphic designer to do? What's the path? Or what would your path be?
Well, I don't want to steer anyone the wrong way. I know that, you know, there is an epidemic out there of certainty, of people that will just tell you everything right now for a price, for a podcast, for an Instagram click. And you got to be real careful with that shit because it's misleading more often than not. I mean, I'll just say it, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm really careful with these answers because here's the deal. What I've seen, and it's a rare thing, the kid who never had that opportunity to go, and she just learned by just making. Like there's no license that you have to have. By the way, I thought I would never get a job without the set of accreditations, right? That was a Midwestern thing. It was a status thing. It was like, no, you don't have a degree? Oh, you're lacking. Because when we were out west being animals, 93 to 98, I would go to Portland. We were making friends with people. I was doing smidges of freelance work. And the guy that was always breaking off the job for you, he loved to tell you where he went to art school and whatever it was, you know, and I would always feel a little naked, you know, like, well, I only have an associate's degree and well, where am I going to go? So that's when I thought you had to go. So I'm real careful to say, turns out you don't have to. So, you know, my answer for these things, it's always trying to be positive, is if you can go, you go. It was a blast. I had a great time. What are they teaching you? Who gives a shit? You're going in the end, if they can teach you to turn the machine on, you can do that on your own. So milk them for everything, you know, how to get in and out of a creative quagmire, how to, you know, one of the guys I got to, you know, this incredible guy named Santiago Piedrafetta. All right. I think that's how you say it. But he was one of my favorite teachers at MCAD because he had and was continuing to work for Banana Republic and Gap. And he was on the front lines of New York City, sweating it out, making all these decisions for websites, things, design, you know, advertising. He knew what it was going to take. He had that. And I learned so much from the guy and hold it really close to me today. So here's the deal. Did I need that? I did need that kick in the ass, you know, and I got that structure through school. I'm just careful to talk about that gal I think about who didn't have those resources. She just went after what she liked to do. And she was using, I don't remember the name, but it was like some version you get at like Target. You buy like a box of software and it's like a quarter version of Photoshop, but it's just enough to get like basics done. She was already working there, you know, and doing what she needed to get done. And it was like, it's awesome. I know I'm being very abstract because I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone because she is a name that you would know now, right? And this is just someone I spoke to 15 years ago. And, you know, she wouldn't want to tell that story, but I hold that close because it was a lesson to me of when I meet these kids who are like, should I go back? And I'll say, all right, well, whip out your phone and show me your portfolio. I can tell you pretty quick whether or not it's worth your time. There's been a lot more times where I said, you already have this stuff. They're not going to give you a green light. Go build your portfolio, show it, shop it, share it in the world. Start sharing right now. What do you mean sharing right now? Show what you've worked on. There's the catch-22 of like, I don't have a job because I don't have a piece of paper, because I don't have a whatever. I say, stop. What band's your favorite band? Blah, blah, blah. Redesign their logo. What are you talking about? Show where it was, show what you did to it, talk about that process, show sketches, things, stuff. That's a project. What if someone didn't read the fine print that says, I'm just doing this for the hell of it? By the way, that's what I did for years. When someone wouldn't hire me, I just went and made my own shit because it was fun to make my own shit, right? And then someone started to buy that. Welcome to the DDC. I mean, what you stood across the street from, I'm not selling the heartbreak of when you work for a big project and they don't pick your logo at the end. I'm selling, you guys could do this too, and why aren't you? I know I'm a little old school when I say the power of pencil on paper. This gives me the blueprint. As you guys can't see this, but I'm holding up my field notes to show Carl. Like, I have sketches I have to scan in, show the client. They're going to pick a couple, and then I will go to war with it in Illustrator. And they'll start to see this thing come to life. But it all starts with a good set of bones, a blueprint, or whatever you want to call it. It starts somewhere. And I'm just proud to report I have seen every facet of, I didn't even need to go to school. And I will just kind of look at each other and just kind of put the little finger in front of your lips and say, shh, be really careful with that. Don't hurt some kid that just spent all his money to go. And then don't hurt the kid who can't go. Go and offer positive things to say, well, here's what I do. Here's how I do it. You can apply this to your life right now. And by the way, I have walked a handful of students and anti-students through the kind of forest the last decade that I've been on the road, because they would come back to these shows. And then to the point where like there was one guy that kind of hires me now, and it was like, hey, I remember it's not that long ago. It's only 7 or 8 years ago. You were pretty, mixed up, but with tenacity, with not taking a big old no, he was able to go and climb out of it. It's pretty exciting, and I wouldn't name those names because these are like friends, and there's a certain candor to that. But the idea is there's someone that you're probably following. Another fun thing to think about is to be open to innovation or not.
Yeah. I was going to say, are you going to be testing out any AI design tools?
Well, I mean, I've seen what it can do, and it's really powerful. And what scares me is to see how easy it is, and then how that's everyone's profile picture now. Because instead of it being a skin smoothing filter, which is complete bullshit and kind of sad and whatever, but that's that get off my lawn kind of talk, I understand. What scares me is like, you're going to use that as your avatar? I would just maybe say like, maybe the AI thing, you don't have to be as afraid of this whole thing. Because here's the deal. A pencil on paper, I just come up with better shit. Now that's maybe me being old fashioned or whatever. I mean, that's just me. But maybe AI can make it easier for me to clean up my files, how to find them, how to connect them, all that kind of stuff. That's what it should be used for. Just getting us, less clicks mean more clicks for screwing around and making up cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then being able to chart the sameness, because that's what I see the sameness of like, oh yeah, that was a good little filter and we're all using it because it made you look heroic. So I don't know. As I graciously try to enjoy what's left of what I have here, I mean, I'll be open to hopefully just streamlining my process. That's enough for me.
Yeah.
Because I would like to try other things than just making logos and making stuff and shipping merch. I would like to try maybe build a home. That's on the horizon. Maybe make some furniture or collaborate on some stuff like that, because I have resources to kind of help bankroll some of that shit. That's what's coming. I don't know what that even means. Or how about this? Stopping everything and just going and driving for a year. We've been talking about that too.
That sounds nice.
What would that even look like? Yeah, I know. I mean, you have a youngster. I'm going to my sister's after this to help her with some stuff. And she has a 12-year-old, and he is growing up very quick.
Yeah.
But 1 year ago, he was 11, and he would kind of sit on my lap and kind of lean on me and kind of like hold your hand. That's just 2 years ago. 3 years ago.
Do not get me started on this.
I know. He's 8 or 9. Like, that's a big, hard spot for my little sister, Leah, because he is, advancing, and he doesn't call her mommy anymore. He calls her mom. No, hey, I did it. You did it, whatever. And I just always say to these things as his dumb uncle, like, hey, man, you got to hold on to that shit as long as you can.
Yeah.
There's no race to become a 13-year-old because that's only in March. When you become a 13-year-old, that's when you're going to start staring down 14. And before you know it, you're Aaron Draplin staring down 50 years old. Why does my hair hurt? I can feel my eyebrows. They hurt. I don't know. What does that mean? So shit like that. So to keep him as sweet as he was just a couple years ago, and I think it's still in there, but we're seeing the pressure from just what it's like to go to middle school.
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm around him, I just always try to say, like, the coolest people I meet in graphic design, they're still kids. Sure, they're 48 years old or 41 or 34 or whatever it is, but they're still a kid. Don't lose this. They're gonna try to beat it out of you.
Yeah. No, I say the same thing. It's because he, like I said, he loves baseball, plays it. I always remember, like I say, remember, this is supposed to be fun.
Right.
It's a game. You start taking it too seriously, then you forget why you did it. And, even like what we're talking about here, it's, how do you keep your passion and your zeal for whatever your chosen profession is? How do you keep that going for years and years and years? But,
well, I'll say to Oliver, I'll say, hey, man, you're always going to be paying the piper. So here's what you have to do. This is your job. You got to go to class. You got to go to 7th grade. You got to get a good grade. He's great. He's fine. That's where you come back and give that to your mom and dad and say, all right, I'm learning and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a 12-year-old. But past that, what do you want to do? Is it just being inside a virtual Minecraft world or whatever it was a couple years ago, or a Fortnite world? Well, start thinking. You have resources around you to help you make something fun or whatever that you could give to your buddies. And you guys have a Fortnite group. Let's make a logo. He's seen this all these years. He understands what I do. But, it's the F word. It's always like, make sure that you're keeping some room for just fun. Because the blurry part of my life now is that stuff is still pretty fun, but it gets bogged down quick. And what gets me out of it are these basic tenets of like, okay, slow down, be thankful for what you get to do. Pick it apart. When you look at everything from one vista, you see the entire vista. It's overwhelming. Go up and walk up to one little fold and flap and just dig into that for now, which, for me, it was showing you these sketches on my book is like, it starts with the sketch and it's just going to be like a funnel. I can't show them one sketch. I'm just showing them 8 or 9. Right?
Yeah.
And that'll be enough to just kickstart this little icon project. And it's like, bringing it back to my nephew one last time, I see him get frustrated. He gets frustrated because the computer won't do it for him. And I have to stop and say, no, you have to go troubleshoot why your computer's having a hard time. And to see that sort of these modern sets of frustrations, hey, I feel them also, and I don't know. And I always just tell them, don't forget who your uncle is. All right. You don't have any just regular ass uncle. You got an uncle that's throwing a little weight around in the old art and design world. Well, should we wrap this thing up?
I think we should. Yeah. I did want to say, I don't know if you remember, and Adobe Max is not sponsoring this episode, but we're just talking about it a lot.
Well, that's where me and you connected.
It is. You probably don't remember because there were so many people, but we connected over the shirt I was wearing. I was wearing a shirt from Landland, from our mutual acquaintance, Dan.
I do remember that.
And from 30 feet away, you hollered, and I mean like hollered, you should get something percent off just for wearing that shirt. And then I came up, I was like, hi. So I thought we could give a quick hello to Dan and to Jess.
2 wonderful people. I am such a gorilla around Jessica. She's just so thoughtful and talented and shit, and I heard the one you guys did.
Immensely talented.
I try to be so gentle when I'm around her because I don't want to scare her away, from just this whole pile of shit. But Dan knows me all the way back to art school. We went to art school together and he was on top of shit back in 98 as much as he is now. I have a lot of respect for him. That is not an easy plight to do every one of those nicks and ticks the way that he draws.
Oh my God.
To all of you listening, please go listen. I listened to the episode you guys did. It was awesome. But go listen to that episode, but also go dig around and take a look at Jessica and Dan's work, because it is a reminder that you can make your own way with fine art and then tactile things like screen printing and stuff, and apply it to some of the biggest things in the world. And by the way, you cannot out land.
Nope.
You know what I mean? I hope people appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it is to do it. There's not a giant set of rewards there other than they own what they do and they do it. And he is the kind of weirdo that will just drive to Oregon. He's got a good friend here, this Eric Niffler guy. He's here too in Portland. Dan, if you're listening, come on out. Let's hang. Because we always talk about what would happen if the DDC got a little bit of a tussle with Dan Black. What would that even look like?
Yeah. Well, Dan, you're awesome. Go to Oregon. And if I'm ever in Minneapolis, I'm buying you a cup of coffee.
Yes, Dan. Well, listen, same deal for you. If you come to Portland, come by the shop. And, by the way, if you're out here, like you come to some conference or something, we can put you up. I got a little extra widow's nest up there where full shower and a full shitter, and I'll towel you off and the whole deal and get you all dried up and, wash all the COVID off you and all that kind of stuff. But if you're ever out here, you let me know and come by the shop.
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Listen, thanks for having me, Carl. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, thanks for listening. Aaron is always on the go, so check out everything he's working on at draplin.com or his Instagram @Draplin. As always, look for a link to our blog post in the show notes of this episode, and check out monotype.com/podcast to read about all of our prior guests. If you've been enjoying our podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to rate and review this episode. And if you really like us, subscribe to the show and share us with your friends. Creative Characters is brought to you by Monotype and is produced by Christopher Olin, Mia Sullivan, and Marie Tabarez. We'll be back with more episodes soon. Take care, everybody.
All right. That it?
We're good.
All right. Where the hell's Sullivan at? Where's Sullivan at? Release me from this content.